and welcome. I'm honored to be the IEEE Awards Board Chair. I'm Karen Panetta, and today we are here to celebrate the 2022 IEEE Robert N. Noyce Medal Recipient, sponsored by Intel Corporation, Dr. Jason Cong. Jason, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thanks for the opportunity to have this dialogue.
Oh, we're super excited to have you here today. Dr. Cong, you've done so much great work in helping the semiconductor industry in design. And I just want to start off by helping our audience understand what a field programmable gate array is, because a lot of folks, they hear these terms and they don't know what it is. So just for those of you that don't know what it is, think about when you wanted to manufacture any sort of design in circuitry and semiconductors. In the olden days, we used to have to take it and send it out to be fabricated. But thanks to Dr. Kong's work, now we can do what we call rapid prototyping. And we can even do that in schools, in labs, anywhere. And even students can use it around the world. So now we're making hardware design accessible to everybody. So Dr. Cong, tell us a little bit about how you even got into this field.
Okay. So it's a long story. I've been at UCLA for 21 years as a faculty member, but my PhD was University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I went there with the interest to just study discrete mathematics, and with Professor C.L. Liu. He has this famous book called The Discrete Mathematics, which we were using when I was back in Peking University. I was fascinated by the topic. I want to study with him, and as a PhD student. When I got there, that's 1986, it turned out his interest is shifting a little bit from just pure math to applied math to optimization. And guess what? The topic he chose as application area was VLSI, or very large scale integrated circuits, because that was the big data problems back in the 1980s, right? So you get millions of transistors to work with.
And only one CPU.
Only one CPU. So I started actually, that's my journey into semiconductor, into integrated circuits. I really enjoyed it because the Moore's law give you all these transistors, devices, you can make use of that. You're doubling every 18 months or 2 years, right? But how do you make use of that? That's really the creative part. That's what we work on. So I would say that the first 10 years was all focused on a customized circuit. That you mentioned CPUs, and we also look at the various kind of, for example, disk controllers, others. And only in 1990s, later part of 1990s, my research, a big focus has shifted to these FPGAs, field programmable gate arrays. It's a fascinating device because when we think about the integrated circuits, normally we think, oh, that's something for experts, for geeks, that we cannot touch that, right? But with FPGA, it's something you can design in your office, on your desk, and you can see the result in the next hour, right? You may say, okay, I don't own an FPGA, but these days it's so easy. It turned out you can just go to Amazon. They have this FPGA in the data center now. You pay about $1.50 per hour. You can use it as long as you want, or as short as you want. So I'm teaching classes. In fact, this quarter, CS 133 is parallel distributed computing. We have a component at the end on heterogeneous computing. The students will actually go into Amazon FPGA and play around with FPGA, designing a circuit to accelerate deep learning, and finish in a week or two. So that's the capability really you have now.
Not only that, I just got to let you know that when FPGAs came out, not only did it change the landscape of education, because all of us at institutions used to have to, if we didn't have the resources to actually send it out to be fabricated, but it also changed the landscape for entrepreneurship, because now anybody, anywhere could build hardware and build their own applications on this hardware, low cost wise, and be able to do these new businesses. So young entrepreneurs everywhere really flourished from this work. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, so when I got into this, and I was teaching digital logic, people used to say to me, well, now, you've got those FPGAs, just push the button and it automatically does the design for you. So could you give us some insight to explain why you still need some, to be an expert before you just push the button and it's not going to automatically do everything for you?
Right. That's an excellent question. And so FPGA has this potential, right? Everyone can use it and to create your own integrated circuit. But the reality is that what you get, they give it to you, is a million kind of programmable logic blocks. Now you have all these interconnects, the programmable interconnects, you can connect them together. And if you have to do that manually, by yourself, you probably will never finish that in a year or two, right? So what we have been working on is to have a layer of a design automation tools to allow you basically to kind of press a button, flip a switch to get a circuit. So that has not been easy. You go through multiple levels of abstraction or automation. The first layer, we call that the physical design. You just tell me what circuit you want, and then we can automatically do the placement and do the routing to connect them together. So that's the first level automation. Then you can say, well, how do I get that circuit? So that's a very good question. So you have to basically write your algorithms typically in terms of the Boolean logic. Then we map that into this different level of this programmable logic blocks. So that's one of my work has still being widely used, called the flow map algorithm. You give me any Boolean circuit, I can guarantee you map it to these programmable logic blocks in terms of the lookup tables with minimum levels or minimum depths, right? But then you can say, well, most of the EE students, maybe some of the CS engineer and computer engineering students knows about Boolean functions, but that's not the way we express algorithms. We typically write C programs, right? That the software program to express algorithm, how to do sorting, how to do data compression. So that's actually the work we have done in the 2000. We call it high-level synthesis. The concept's been around, but really we kind of make it efficient and optimize, reduce practice, where you can literally start from C programs and you're writing C, C++ code as a software program, and then we can compile it into the circuits, that basically into Boolean logic, and then goes down. So you can see there's a multiple layering going on. So for those of you who actually use the high-level synthesis tool, it says you are almost right. You write the C, C++ program, except you also have to give some hints. The hints, we call that the pragmas. You says you parallelize here, you pipeline here, and it's not too many, but it requires some deep understanding about the circuit structure you have going to produce, which could be easy for someone with circuit design background, could be hard for some of the software engineers. So right now our work is to further lower down that barrier. The hope is you just write your vanilla C, C++ program. Now we're developing a deep learning kind of engine that you can think about a robot. We will actually do this architecture hints automatically for you.
Wow.
So you can actually create a very efficient circuit.
Wow.
I think I have another video that I was just given a talk at the BSI Design Conference. It's actually in YouTube as well. To give an example, for example, you start from this convolution neural network code. It's well known now, 6-level nested loop. If you don't do anything, you throw it to a high-level synthesis tool, you do get a solution right away. But it's slow. It's like 80x slower than CPU. But if you add all these design hints, now you can be 100x faster, right? So that process now we can pretty much automate by this automated engine.
Amazing. And I love the fact that you're evolving this area full with deep learning. So AI is coming into play. But right. I want to point out something you mentioned. A lot of students say, I want to do hardware. I don't want to do software. And you just mentioned when you're modeling, you're writing C, C++. You have to understand the hardware, and I think we really, I think the point is that young people today, or even all real good engineers, need to know both. Here, you know, you have to be interdisciplinary, so we're not siloed and say, well, I only want to touch the hardware.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's an excellent comment. And there's a lot of interest, right, from especially young students, for example, about machine learning. But then remember, machine learning has two words, right? The first part is the machine. The second part is the learning. So really, there's a tremendous progress in the last 10 years or so on deep learning. But what made deep learning possible was actually all the innovations with the semiconductor technology, with all the computer technology. So literally, you can design networks which were very, very deep, the 100 layers or even higher. When I was a graduate student, I also studied neural networks, but then quickly noticed that the capability is very limited because with the computing power we have 30 years ago or 40 years ago, literally you can only do 2 layers or 3 layers. Whatever you can express, whatever you can influence, that is very limited in terms of capability. So a big part of this advance in deep learning was enabled by the hardware technology. So of course, another part is also with the spread of internet. We have so much data we can use to train, right? That's also very important. But just kind of getting back to your comments, I think if you know that what both hardware and software, you can go much further. A good example, for example, is the TPU, the tensor processing engine from Google, right? So that's really powers a lot of deep learning effort within Google. After that was introduced 6-7 years ago, now I think every company has its own hardware acceleration engine. Like we did some work very early on, 2015, and just use FPGAs. You can create a customized solutions for deep learning acceleration.
Excellent. Now, all right, we want to back up. We want to go back before you were Dr. Cong. What got you into science and engineering in the first place? What attracted you to the field?
Depends how far I want to go back. So I always enjoy math. That when I was in middle school, high school, I participated in the math competitions, and at the city level, and I have got various kind of awards. So I had a hard time to decide when I get into the college. It was natural passage to go to the math department. But I was really fascinated that by the fact why computers can compute even faster than I do, right? So with that question in mind, so I decided to take a detour when I did the campus visit at the Peking University. So that's a Harvard equivalent back in China. So I also visited their computer science department. And I met someone there. He told me all the courses you're supposed to take on data structure, digital logic, and to help you to understand the algorithms, why computer can first compute and why it compute faster than human being. So I thought that was fascinating. So I got into computer science instead of math. But it turned out that the two areas are highly related, and all the math skills that helped me a lot to appreciate, to understand many computer science concepts well. So you can see that that influence is always there. That's why I got very passionate about discrete math. So that's actually used a lot in computer science instead of the calculus, right? So the continuous math. So that's where was the reason I went to Illinois to study with Professor C.L. Liu. Just to initial thought was I want to do something more on the discrete math, because that has such a strong connection to computer science. I thought that was the best kind of a hybrid connection between the two fields.
And let's ask now, so have you had any pushing forward, not just for your students, but I heard that you're a huge advocate for women in STEM as well. Can you talk a little bit about some of the women in your life that you've inspired to go on to STEM?
Yeah. So I think first, obviously, in math and computer science, I think there's a lot of opportunities for women, and I really I can see they can compete, they can perform equally well than the male students, if not any better, right? So at least I have this personal experience. I have a daughter. She started at UCLA in computer science. She's now doing a PhD at Harvard in physics. In fact, specialized in quantum information science. So at least that's a concrete examples that we have. Over my career, I also have a multiple that female students in my lab. They are also very, very creative. And in fact, one of them was going to come to the award dinner with me for that celebration. So she has become a faculty member, Professor Pepe Go. So you can see that they excel equally well in the field. I really will encourage that the young students to, especially female students, to consider STEM. One good trend I've seen at UCLA, at least in my CS 133 class, I will say in the past decade or so, I see a steady increase of the female student participation, which is great.
That's wonderful. That's right. And we talk about problem solving and coming up with innovation and having everybody's perspective to look at problems from a different angle really helps us build more robust systems and get greater ideas. Can you talk a little bit about entrepreneurship? Because I see that you are quite the entrepreneur. You're not, you're normally people like, oh, it's a professor. He's just teaching. Oh, he just publishes papers. But you've got it all over that. Let's talk about some of your entrepreneurship ventures.
Right. In fact, I had zero experience with entrepreneurship when I graduated from Illinois and with a PhD, started a faculty position at UCLA, obviously because we're more on the theoretical side. But as we go, we start creating these wonderful algorithms and tools, right? For example, to help people to do FPGA designs, and also that in turn can help you to evaluate what's the best FPGA architecture. So I give a lot of credit to my success. For example, the first company come to us is Cypress Semiconductor. It's today still a major player in the semiconductor field. So they have, at that time, back in the 1990s, a strong presence in called the PLD, programmable logic devices. FPGA is part of that. So they saw the publication, and some of the engineers came to me saying, can you help us to improve our tools and the architecture designs? I said, sure, we have all these publications and the tools. In fact, it was also available. You can get it available from us. Maybe you can use them. So they went back, and after a few months, they came back. So, oh, this is wonderful. This is exactly what we want. I said, what's wrong? And why are you not using them? They says, well, for us to use something to support a few $100 million product line, we really need, for example, bug fixes and customization, further enhancement, and so on and so forth. So Karen, you have this professor background. So that's not what we do in the lab. We normally solve a problem and then we move on to the next problem, right? So it made me think really there's this gap, right, from a theory and to kind of a commercialization. And you want to make an impact, but there's this gap. How do you make that impact? So they basically gave me the idea is that do you have students that can actually help us to make that possible? So was fortunate enough to PhD students was in their final year. I talked to them, and they says, yeah, let's do it. So we set up a company, and in a non-conventional way. We didn't take any VC money because the Cypress was so committed. They gave us a multi-million-dollar purchase order right away as we found it. Yeah, so that's actually helped us to get started. So, but once you have that experience, you realize not every year. I have over 500 papers. Not everything actually is ready for commercializing. Sometimes it's too early. Sometimes it's incremental. But then there's this major opportunities. You do want to make an effort to push it out to the industry. For example, this high-level synthesis work I did, again, it's not just with me, with some of my former PhD students. and Zhu Zhang now is a faculty member at Cornell. Yiping Fan is an engineer at Google, right? So the tool, once you actually make it usable, this is what we do, right? We have a wonderful algorithm, and then you validate on one type of FPGA, and then you show the improvement. So that's as far as publication, it's ready to go, and then we're done, and then we typically move to the next problem. But the thing about it, if you want to make it usable, then you have to really use it to support all FPGAs, and you got to support all the programs, right? So that's the part that was a big gap from so the initial idea algorithm to the productization, that to enable the community to make use of that. So that's what we did. We set up the company called Auto ESL, and so after 4 or 5 years, that acquired by Xilinx, the at that time the largest FPGA companies. So now they recently also become AMD. So you see this name AMD Xilinx. Xilinx also did a fantastic job. They acquired the company in 2011. So they really consistently support and promote the tool. So the latest name is called Vivado HRS, used to be and also now called Vitus HRS. So if you do a Google Scholar search, literally there are thousands of papers making use of that tool. So that's the satisfaction that I want to say that you get, is that beyond a single paper or a set of papers, but then now you create this community and with tens of thousands of users, right? To really creating that. So I think that's definitely amplify the research result.
That's amazing. I just want most of the young entrepreneurs out there. Not too many people can go with a startup without, a very good purchase order before they even launch the product.
Yeah, that's probably a non-conventional way to go. That I would say the auto ESL probably is more conventional. When we see the power of high-level synthesis, we did talk to corporate VCs, right? The other VCs, and to get it going. But I'm just saying that in some rare cases, that's how I get started, just because the company or the industry was so interested, right? They really want to see the technology being supported and making impact.
You've talked a lot about your publications. Can you talk about the role that IEEE has played in helping disseminate some of your work, or other factors that helped you build your network through IEEE?
So I have been I think an IEEE student member early on, has been just really benefit so much with the interaction with the society. I just building a network, having a society involved in the society is it's very important. During my career, I was mostly associated with IEEE initially with the Circuit Systems Society, and over the time. And IEEE also created a council called the Council on Electronic Design Automation, or CEDA. So that's probably a better fit for my specialty. So I was more involved in CEDA. But through those interactions and also all the major conferences they supported. For example, in my field, one of the major conferences, Design Automation Conference. I think IEEE is supporting that jointly together with ACM, right? So I really got to know many collaborators. Some of them also become either the sponsors in our research program, or could be customers in the startups. So it was actually just this amazing ecosystem that IEEE has created, and I will encourage everyone to take advantage of that as early as possible. Right? Of course, also all the IEEE publications, that's a big plus, especially during a pandemic year. You cannot go to the library, and everything's online to make it.
What's a library? What's paper?
That's right.
So let's talk about you a lot about your career. Let's talk about advice for young students or young people starting out. Do you have what would you like to say to young people who are starting out or thinking about Yes, I'm doing math and science. Yes, I'm doing engineering. I don't know where to go. How do I find my way? What would you recommend?
Yeah, that's an important question. It's also a tough question, but I think there's maybe a few rules one can follow. And one is that I think a curiosity is very important. I just thinking back that the reason I get into computer science was really I was curious how computer can even work, right? That outperform that human being. So having that question in mind, it's I think it's very important. But that seems to be a repeating pattern, and some of the students get very good at answering questions in homework exams. But I just think it's equally important to be able to ask the right questions. That um, so, um, for example, the work we are doing with again coming back to the PTA was really also driven by the another observation I have over the time is saying you have the CPUs processors from Intel, from AMD, IBM, which is so widely used, but it's one size fits all, right? So you use it, we use it to do video conferencing. Our kids could be using to play games, right? That some other people use it for circuit simulation. The one size fits all cannot be very sufficient, efficient. The question is, can we really come up with a customized computing engines for each task? So that's where the idea of using FPGA as the kind of a customized computing engine comes in, right? So I would say in most all cases that not only sort of my initial study, but all our research program was come with the right set of questions. So basically, when we get to this energy barrier, the power efficiency barrier, how can we get over that? Right? What are the alternatives we have? So I would encourage every students will think about it, maybe in a broad way that when you choose the area. So I think looking at the job perspective, it's important, but it's also maybe ask the question, what would be an important question, right, for the computing industry, or maybe more broadly, right, for science and technology. So that will help us to position our kind of a career path and the research, right? I think that's um, um, number one. Also, some time ago, I heard a podcast from a Stanford lecture series. I thought it was very good. Is that we need to understand our strengths, and then we need to understand the societal need, and also we need to understand our interest. Um, when they all match together, that's actually who actually probably has the most successful career path. So, for example, just not too long ago, a decade on, I started learning downhill skiing that with my daughter. That she is so good, but I barely can catch up. But I get starting enjoying it and on the green, blue, and black. But I know my limitation. I can never be a world class skier. Okay? So that's where you're talking about your interests and your kind of a strengths, right? They got to match, right? So that's another thing that everyone can actually you can look around what's the hottest area and what's the most interesting. But you also got to ask what's unique strengths you have and how you can leverage that strength to create something that the best suitable for your career. I strongly believe everyone has his own kind of a
Mhm.
niche that space can be super successful.
That is great words to live by. That everybody does have their own strengths, and that's finding. It's the challenge of going through our own journeys to find that strength.
Yeah.
And and so I think that you really have shown us today that how you can pull multiple things together, multiple fields together, and how just persistence and being willing to collaborate and reach out and thinking of a broader purpose can really influence and change lives and influence new markets and economic opportunities and change the face of education. So again, Dr. Cong, from all of us here at IEEE, we want to congratulate you on receiving the 2022 IEEE Robert N. Noyce Medal. And we also want to thank our sponsor, Intel Corporation, for sponsoring this wonderful a prestigious honor. So congratulations again, and thank you for being with us here today, Dr. Cong, and good
Thank
luck.
you.
And
Yeah.
we'll see you all. We'll see you in San Diego at our Vixen Honor Ceremony.
Thank you so much. I also want to take the opportunity to thank all my former students, my collaborators, my former PhD advisor. They were just instrumental to everything we have achieved here at UCLA. And I thank IEEE for the recognition. This is tremendous.
Thank you.
Thank you.